At the beginning of today's conference, I said there was 3 goals that we had set out for all of you. Education, getting to know each other, and taking action. So session number 1, we had a little education. We got to know some of the experts in the room. Hopefully, you were just networking, maybe meeting some folks. And now we're going to give you some more education, but really this is an opportunity to get involved and take action, because the reality is, in order to move clinical trials forward, in order for us to get treatments for our loved ones with PWS, the first step begins with clinical trials. And the faster that we can fill these clinical trials, the faster we will have treatments for our loved ones. So my ask for all of you today is, if your loved one is eligible for a clinical trial, consider it. You get early access to a potentially life-changing drug. You get to make a change for this community. And if your loved one is perhaps not eligible for these clinical trials, pay attention anyway, because you may know someone that you meet that you can then tell them about one of these opportunities. So to get us started, we're actually going to have a presentation from Dr. Strong to tell us a little bit more about the clinical trial development pathway.
Great, so I was just going to touch a little bit on the process of clinical trials so that you can put these presentations into context. So it is a long process, as those of us who have been parents of kids with PWS for a number of years can appreciate. Usually starting on the left with discovery of a drug that may have an effect, a clinical effect that we want, and testing that in what we call preclinical models. So looking in cells, looking in mouse models of PWS to see if the drug does what we think it should do and whether it looks like it's safe, at least in those models. It then moves into the clinical trials, and that's what we'll be discussing today. And if after all of those clinical trials there's enough evidence that shows efficacy and shows a good safety profile, then the sponsoring company will submit a new drug application for the FDA to review and hopefully approve for a new indication. So if we focus on the middle part, those clinical trials, there's 3 phases of clinical trials before approval. The phase 1 is often called the first in human. That is when the drug first is administered to humans. Those are usually very small trials. In the rare disease space, they may be as little as 15 or 20 individuals. Sometimes they're not even individuals with the rare disease. It's just an opportunity to see that the drug is sort of going where you expect it to go, that it doesn't have any unexpected safety issues, and that you get a sense of how it is metabolized by the body. If all that looks good, then a drug will move to phase 2, and those are oftentimes like different doses of the drug. It's a larger study, maybe a little bit longer, and it gives the sponsoring company an idea if it's actually doing what you think it's going to do. So there will be measures of, like, is it reducing hyperphagia? Is it improving sleep, for example? And all of that information is used for the phase 3 study, which is sometimes called the pivotal trial. And that's where the company and the FDA agree on what you want the outcomes to be, like what the drug has to do, what it has to show, how much it needs to reduce hyperphagia by. And those are predefined or pre-specified. And it's a larger group. It's usually the drug versus placebo. And then sometimes there'll be an open label extension where everybody gets the drug for a longer period of time. It is that information, it's actually the whole program that is then submitted to the FDA for consideration for approval. We also have what's called post-approval studies that we may all need to learn about, which is once the drug is approved, there may be studies later on to see, well, you know, the question that was asked this morning, if a hyperphagia drug given early can prevent the onset of hyperphagia? What is the right dosing? What are the best people, what is the group that responds the best, and why do other people not respond as well to a specific drug? But as Susan mentioned, the number one reason that clinical trials are delayed or not completed is due to an insufficient number of participants. And this is really where the community involvement is so important to getting these trials done and getting them done efficiently. And as Susan said, we will never tell you, oh, you should be in a clinical trial. You should never feel pressure from us to enter a clinical trial. We will apply a little bit of gentle pressure for you to learn about the clinical trials and think about the clinical trials. There are several potential benefits. Having early access to a drug that is potentially life-changing would be a fantastic thing. And as we've seen with these clinical trials, there is the period, the placebo-controlled period, then this open-label extension that most companies do, where you can stay on the drug long-term, hopefully until an approval. So it may be that you have access to a drug years before others in the community do. Our clinicians are getting really good at doing PWS clinical trials. It allows you to build a relationship with an expert in PWS. Most of the sponsors will cover your travel costs at least, so to reduce the burden on the participants and their families. And it really does help us as a community learn which drugs are going to be safe and effective. Of course, there are risks. These clinical trials, we have worked with companies. Companies are very cognizant of the fact that we want to reduce the amount of burden on you as a participant, but they still often need you to come into the clinical trial site. So it's a significant investment of time. The drug might not work. And that's an answer. It's an important answer for the community, but it's a disappointing answer if you're part of that clinical trial. And the full risk of the drugs may not be known. So there's a lot of oversight and safety monitoring that goes into these clinical trials, but sometimes unexpected side effects pop up, and we don't know them until we know them. There are many layers of protection for participants in clinical trial. The FDA has oversight. They review all of that preclinical information before it ever goes into a human. In an investigational new drug application, you may hear about an IND. And if there's any problems that arise in a clinical trial, they review all of that as well, and they'll put a hold on the trial if they think that there may be a problem with the drug. In addition, the study investigator at the site where you go to do a clinical trial will get all of the background information from the company. They'll be aware of any potential side effects that are known, and they'll know how to look for those. So, feeling comfortable with the study site investigator, I think, is really important. In addition, wherever the study is being run, there'll be an independent institutional review board that protects participants' safety, and they look at all the information as well. And many clinical studies also have a separate data safety monitoring board, and they'll monitor the data throughout the trial. So if side effects are coming up, they'll know about that, and they also typically have the power to stop a clinical trial if they have any safety concerns. So that leads to the question of, should I enroll my loved one in a clinical trial? And again, that is a question that only you can answer. We'll encourage you to learn about the trials, find out about which ones you might be eligible for, speak with your personal doctor as well as the people on site, to learn if your child is even eligible, and then if it's going to be feasible for you to complete that. As I said, at the site, they'll have a lot of information, so you can ask about if you have any concerns about safety, or logistics, and then make the decision that's right for you and your family. We do want to encourage you to consider participating in clinical trials. If you're not comfortable or you're not able, there's plenty of other ways that you can participate in the research. You can be part of the global PWS registry. That is critical, to have information. That data is being used to compare for people who are in clinical trials, which it can be really, really important as well. There's many other opportunities. So we want you to consider it, but if not, we want you to do other things too. We have a lot of resources on our website about, what questions should I ask before I go into a clinical trial. So the NIH and this Center for the Investigation of Study in Clinical Trials, whatever that acronym stands for on the bottom, but we have a link on our website, has prepared questions you might not have thought of to ask your clinical trial site. On our website, we also have frequently asked questions that you can download. We have a clinical trial alert. Clinical trials are either ongoing or planned for all ages in PWS. So if you sign up for the clinical trials alert, you'll get notified when new clinical trials come online. And there's also, sort of experiences of people who have been in clinical trials that you might be interested in. So another way to help is to be thanking the individuals who have participated in clinical trials over the years. I mean, I know that my son had access to growth hormone because somebody else took the time to participate in a growth hormone trial many years ago. And so I think, it's really an important thing that we can all do, and even if we're not able to participate in a clinical trial, being supportive of people who are in clinical trials is really important. So I will not take up any more time, and I will let you hear about those clinical trials.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Theresa, for giving us that background. The next part of this is going to be a quick panel conversation. So we're going to go through the line. We have 6 clinical trial opportunities that are currently enrolling volunteers. So we have representatives from each today. So we're just going to take turns going down the line. They're going to give you a quick overview of their trial, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. So let's go ahead and start with Aardvark.
So hi everyone, I'm Monsi Jamin. I am a pediatric endocrinologist. I'm also the Chief Medical Officer at Aardvark Therapeutics. I'm really happy to be here. And first of all, I want to just thank all the parents I've had a chance to really speak with. I'm amazed with what you do day to day and how you advocate for your families. It makes my job easier because I get to learn so much from you, so thank you for that, and I want to just give you a round of applause. So now I'll talk about Aardvark, because my CEO, Dr. Lee, is standing right there, sitting right there. So Aardvark is working on an oral therapy that targets bitter taste receptors in your gut. And that allows for certain hunger hormones to be either increased or decreased to allow to decrease hyperphagia. So if you see on the left side of my slide, when it comes up, if you see on the left side of this slide, you will see 2 hormones, CCK. CCK receptors are in the intestine, and usually when we eat, that should increase. It's a signal to the brain to stop eating, you're full. But in patients with Prader-Willi, that tends to be low. And so what we're targeting are receptors in the gut that allow those signals to increase and allow you to feel, or allow patients to feel satiated. Now, that's a little bit about our drug. I'll tell you a little bit about our clinical trials. So far, we have just completed our phase 2. We're just finishing up some data analysis. We're excited about that. But more importantly, I'm here to share some late-breaking news today, along with my team here that's here from Aardvark, along with my CEO. We just got approval to move forward with our phase 3 clinical trial. We're very excited. That just shows us that there is a real need. The FDA is seeing it, the regulatory agencies are seeing it, and we're getting support. And so I'm sure you're going to hear some wonderful things about all the other clinical trials going on, and it's just an exciting time to be in this space for a very much unmet need. In terms of our trials, if you have questions, feel free to ask afterwards, but I'll tell you briefly, we're going to be in the US with multiple sites, Europe, as well as Asia Pacific. And you can see some of the qualifiers. We will have the patient groups that will be over 13 years of age. And before we were doing 18 plus, but now we get to include 13 years and older. And that's a definite change, and we're really happy to be including a younger population. And I think the last thing I have on there is just the HQ-CT score requirement. But obviously happy to share more after this presentation.
Thank you so much, Monsi. And what great news that we've got a phase 3 ready to go. I did have one question for you. You mentioned, that this stays in the gut. Can you talk a little bit about safety and what the safety profile might look like for this drug?
Yeah, absolutely. So far, based on our phase 2 clinical trial results, and interim analysis as well, we've had a favorable safety profile. And you always think about that when you think about these clinical trials. And so because it's gut mediated, it's gut restricted. And so you take it by mouth, it works in the gut, and it's expelled. But there is very limited systemic, so in your blood, response by the drug. And so that actually in itself limits the amount of systemic effect you may have of any of the side effects that previous medications in the CCK family have caused, which would be some neuro or for pancreatitis. And we haven't seen that, and we're hoping to really establish that safety profile as we move forward.
Great, thank you so much. So once again, this was Aardvark. It's ARD-101 is the drug, and it sounds like it's going to be a phase 3 trial for ages 13 and up. So next we're going to move to pitolisant. Dave, if you could give us a little bit of information about your trial.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is David Seiden. I'm actually a neurologist and sleep specialist, and I'm the senior medical director at Harmony Biosciences. And our approach is slightly different in that the primary focus of the trial, which I'll tell you about in a moment, is not necessarily hyperphagia per se, although we are interested in that particular symptom. Our primary focus is excessive daytime sleepiness. And as I'm sure many of you know and experience, that's a particularly important symptom in patients with Prader-Willi Syndrome. It can affect quality of life, and in fact, can also potentially affect other behavioral symptoms and maybe even hyperphagia as well. But as I said, our primary focus is daytime sleepiness. And we are testing a medication called pitolisant, which in fact is already on the market and is commercialized for a different disorder of sleep called narcolepsy, which also causes daytime sleepiness. And in fact, it's interesting because there's quite a bit of overlap between patients who have narcolepsy and people who have sleepiness related to Prader-Willi syndrome. Pitolisant actually acts by increasing a particular neurotransmitter in the brain called histamine. It's one of the wake-promoting chemicals, along with a number of other chemicals in the brain, but our focus is on histamine. And as I said, it's been on the market for patients who have narcolepsy and is a safe and effective treatment for that group. And we're hoping that we're going to also see improvements in daytime sleepiness in patients with Prader-Willi syndrome. In terms of the trial, we've completed a phase 2 trial already. We see a very good signal in terms of improvements in daytime sleepiness. And in fact, we also saw some improvements in a variety of behavioral domains, particularly in irritability and temper tantrums. And interestingly, we also saw some improvements in hyperphagia as well. And those will be some secondary endpoints that we'll be looking at during the trial. So just in terms of the trial, which we call TEMPO, this is a trial which will include both a double-blind part of the study where people will be given either pitolisant at varying doses based on the person's weight or a placebo. And that will be an 11-week study, which will then be followed, if interested, with an open label part of the study. As Theresa said, that's where you actually know that you're getting real pitolisant. We don't think it's too onerous of a trial. There are 5 visits to the clinic, and the additional visits can be done, on a Zoom call or a phone call. And the eligibility criteria, we list only 3 here. There are other eligibility criteria, but if you're 6 years or older, you're eligible to participate in the trial as long as you have a clear diagnosis of Prader-Willi syndrome and you've got some degree of excessive daytime sleepiness, which we can measure, by various assessments that are done at the clinic. It's a multi-center trial with a number of sites in the United States as well as a number of sites in Europe and also Australia. We've started the trial already. I think we've got 9 people enrolled so far in several sites in the United States, and we'll be having an investigator meeting in November to get the European sites going as well. Oh, and also Canada, I failed to mention. We'll have some sites there as well. And that's pretty much it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dave. Now, you said the primary endpoint is daytime sleepiness. What were the secondary endpoints?
So the other endpoints that we're interested in will be we'll be using something called the ABC checklist, where we'll be looking at a variety of behavioral symptoms. We're particularly interested in irritability, where we saw a very strong signal in the phase 2 study for that. And we'll also be looking at hyperphagia. So patients will be, filling in the hyperphagia questionnaire.
Great.
Caregivers particularly, yeah.
Wonderful. So this was the pitolisant study, phase 3, enrolling patients ages 6 and up. Next, we're going to hear from Acadia.
All right, great. Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Elena Sabuji. I'm a child neurologist and medical director at Acadia. And I'm going to be talking about our clinical studies of intranasal carbetocin for hyperphagia in PWS. So first, let me talk a little bit about carbetocin. So carbetocin is very similar to the natural occurring hormone oxytocin. And we know one of the characteristics of PWS is a deficiency of oxytocin related to a decrease in the amount of oxytocin-producing neurons in the brain. So carbetocin is a synthetic analog of oxytocin that binds to oxytocin receptors with a greater sensitivity than oxytocin itself, making it more potent at being able to activate these receptors that are responsible for functions related to social behavior, anxiety, and importantly, hunger. So some of you may be aware that there was a previous phase 3 study that was conducted by Levo Therapeutics looking at intranasal carbetocin for hyperphagia and PWS. And what they were looking at 2 different doses, a high and low dose, and their hypothesis was that the high dose would be the most beneficial. That unfortunately did not bear out to be the case, but when they did a separate analysis looking at just that low dose cohort of patients, they did find that there was significant improvement in their hyperphagia. So in January of 2022, the FDA denied the application, citing insufficient efficacy at the high dose, and recommended an additional study looking specifically at that low dose of 3.2 milligrams given 3 times a day. So Acadia acquired the rights from Levo Therapeutics, and we are doing just that, another phase 3 study, with the goal to be able to collect the efficacy and safety data needed to file for another application for potential approval and use in clinical care. So the study itself, the main study is a 12-week study where patients will be randomly assigned to either carbetocin or placebo, with the goal of approximately 170 participants, so 85 in each group. And there will be 5 in-clinic visits. So the first visit is the screening eligibility check. Then the baseline visit, they will receive their first dose of study drug. And then 3 more additional clinic visits at week 2, week 8, and week 12, with a remote visit at week 4. Then at that last visit, they will be able to have the opportunity to immediately roll over into the open label extension study, where all participants will receive intranasal carbetocin, and that will extend up to 36 months. So we've already started enrollment. The first patient was enrolled in November of 2023, and we have sites that are open in the US, Canada, UK, and plan to have sites open in the EU too. So the eligibility criteria, it's for purposes of time, I can't go through each one, but some of the key criteria would be participants between the ages of 5 and 30. They need to have symptoms of hyperphagia to be able to be used as a parameter for measuring potential improvement. They can't have a new food intervention within the previous month of entering into the study, and they can't be involved in another interventional trial within that first previous 6 months before enrolling. So here you can see the QR code. This is to our website where you can find more information about the study. There's a video you can watch that's more about the conduct of the study. There's also a map similar to what you're seeing here that outlines the sites that are involved. You can scroll over these pins and see the direct contact information to be able to reach that site directly. If you're interested in your loved one participating, there's also the opportunity to fill out a form on this website where you give your contact information and you will be contacted and linked to the closest site that's actively enrolling to you. And we do cover travel expenses. So I think that's...
Thank you so much, Elena. You mentioned that the carbetocin is taken 3 times per day. For our school-age children, do they need to take the medication to school in order to get that midday dose?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's not a requirement. So what we do, we say with meals if possible, but given the hectic schedule of the day-to-day, that it's possible for the participant to be able to return home from school and take it at that time. We just ask that the time between doses is not less than 2.5 hours apart.
Great, thank you so much, Elena. So again, this was carbetocin enrolling ages 5 to 30 for their phase 3 trial. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Singh, who's actually representing 2 clinical trials.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here talking about these 2 trials, and really it's exciting to see all the new stuff that's happening. We are all rooting for new drugs to come in because we need to harness the technology to help our loved ones with Prader-Willi Syndrome. It's as simple as that. So speaking of technology, I'm here to talk about 2 device studies. I'm going to start with vagal nerve stimulation. I'm proud to be, Maimonides Medical Center, which is where, our site is located in Brooklyn, New York, was the first site. But recently we've had, how many more sites?
We have 10 open and quite a few coming.
Yeah, 10 open and quite a few coming. It's fascinating. There's the first study of this kind which is being done in collaboration with PIs all across the country and FPWR, right? So all the the contributions and the charitable sort of contributions that you've made and philanthropic support has made this happen. This is unique, and it would not have happened without your contributions. And I'll tell you why. To get a drug into market, as many of you know, it's like multi-million, dollar investment, and which pays off if it goes through FDA. A device does not have that kind of a system, right? So devices are hard to, FDA doesn't really care as much. You can get clearance. Device companies have no incentive to market it for a rare disease. Now, when Tony Holland from the UK had the, sort of by chance, him and his team detected that there is a signal in reducing outbursts with vagal nerve stimulation. Just with 7-8 patients, the response was so robust that FPWR has taken a risk that even big drug companies would never have. And it is based in such sound scientific methodology, it makes complete sense. The vagal nerve stimulation is a key parasympathetic stimulator of the body, which means that the rest of our body can go into fight or flight mode, right? There are thousands of neurons and lots of things, adrenaline, noradrenaline at work, but there's only one nerve that takes all of that information to the brain and back to calm our bodies down, the vagus nerve, the 10th nerve, right? And because of their work, because of work done in other syndromes, and we know that in particular one branch that goes to the outer ear has this direct line into the nerve center in the brain. Brilliant. It was as if it was designed to be used for our device. So, now what we do is, so I'll give you a very quick, I'm so happy that we don't have those timers today. I can go for an hour, right? For like 4 years straight, I was like talking so fast, like a New Yorker on steroids, but I don't have to do that anymore, so I'm so grateful, thank you. So, all right, so I'll slow it down and explain it. So basically, so the way, so think about it this way. When you take a deep breath, calm down, take a deep breath. Why do people say that? Our great-great-grandfathers, this old wives' tale, whatever you want to call it, it works because when we breathe deeply in, our diaphragm, which is the big muscle that supports the lung on the underside, stimulates the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve calms us down. Now, try doing that to your loved one with PWS while they're throwing a chair at you. Not gonna happen, right? Calm down, take a deep breath, right? It's won't work. But find a device to stimulate that nerve for 4 hours a day. Like it's like meditating for 4 hours. I do it for 10 minutes and that's more than enough for me. I wish I had the patience to sit for 4 hours. So you're allowing a device to do the work for you. So the mechanism makes a lot of sense. It is not a drug company funded study, which means that there's a little bit of a collaboration that will need to happen to support the logistics of you coming to us. There are angel flight type of arrangements that we can make. The FPWR team, the two Lisas, Lisa Burnett, Lisa Mattisvac, and many others who are part of the team are happy to speak with you, work with you. The inclusion criteria is simple: 2 or more aggressive outbursts. It doesn't mean it needs to be like chair flying through the air. It could be an outburst that is disruptive to your loved one and to their surroundings. So instead of worrying about what the criteria is, about whether or not my child is meeting that threshold, give FPWR a call and they will help you decide. All right, so, the screening is done, sort of virtually, and you need to come in on site, just to get the blood draw and some basic EKGs and things like that. But otherwise, everything is taken care of. The only real exclusion criteria would be if your loved one has a history of seizures. Other than that, it is very well tolerated. Is there anything else? So 4 hours each day. It's a 12-month study. There are 2 clinical visits. Someone was asking me about Canada. We've had folks from outside just Canada. I think it'll be hard for us to do it beyond, but even for the Canadians, we would love you to join us, but you'll have to come in person at least for those 2 in-person visits. But New York is not that far. And I'm sure there'll be questions. We're happy to take them. Again, there's no FDA approval type of process here, so we've jumped ahead, and we just want the evidence so that people don't waste money and time using a device that doesn't work. Our the mechanism makes sense though. So I'm very excited about the study. Please join us.
So before we go to the next slide, Deepan, you said you have to wear it for 4 hours a day. Does that have to be 4 hours consecutively? Can it be broken up?
No, so we recommend 2 hours in each, in each time. And we kind of look at compliance. We know that life gets in the way sometimes, and some days you're wearing a little lesser. And the fact of the matter is that even if you sort of accidentally keep it on too long, which we don't want you to do because we don't want your loved one to get sort of like bored or annoyed with the device kind of automatically turns off after 4 hours. It's very simple. I mean, I've used it myself. You kind of put it on, you increase the intensity until you feel a little bit, and then you just notch it down. And I'm telling you, if you think that your child cannot do it, you'll be shocked and surprised with how well they can do it. They can do it better than you. They experience it, and they're able to. So the most annoying, I'm going to be honest, the only thing that I've heard from parents as being a little difficult is to respond to texts every day, because you'll get texts every day or reminders every day to kind of log in the number of outbursts and things like that, and how many hours you wore it. And I know that, but that's your commitment to the study. Remember, it's a collaborative effort. It's your study that you have paid for. Support it.
All right, next one.
That's good? All right, next one. All right, so light therapy. Now, this is phase 4, right? So how many of you know about guanfacine? Raise your hand if you know what guanfacine or Intuitive is, right? Okay, so the reason you guys know about guanfacine is because of FPWR support, right? I'm so grateful FPWR supported us for another phase 4 trial, which would never have happened without the support of FPWR. And I'm proud to say that we completed the trial, and we have submitted the manuscript. And then thank you for those of you who were participants in the study. Now, going in the same. So thinking about a study similarly, which won't be dependent on FDA approvals and things like that, I was thinking about what else is out there already, which has enough evidence base to support its use in Prader-Willi Syndrome, right? And it was like, I don't know what I was, like one sleepless night, it came to me, light therapy. So I knew, as a psychiatrist, I know that light therapy is evidence-based for seasonal affective disorder, and I looked more into it. It's been studied for sleepiness in particular in folks with neurological disorders, traumatic brain injury, and Parkinson's disease, okay? So I when I thought about it mechanistically, it made sense. I mean, look at this, our room right now. 50% of you are nodding off just because it's dark, right? Like if I put a light in front of you, guess what? You're gonna wake up. That's how it works. So you have, 2 30-minute encounters with light therapy, and it's a very easy trial. In fact, you can start today. I'll tell you how. Otuo, do you want to get up? So Otuo, my friend, he's in the corner table right there between VNS and PWSA, and he will enroll you today. All right. So if you go to him, he'll take your information down, ask you some screening questions, and schedule an appointment for you. You do not have to travel for this study at all. This is a 100% remote study. We will ship to you a super humongous light box that costs a fortune and is not available in the market easily, okay? And we know it's evidence-based because that's what was used by Harvard in their study in Parkinson's disease. So I contacted their PI, I love this. No time limit. All right. So I contacted the Harvard folks, and they said this is the only one that they've studied, so that's what we're using. We'll ship to you. So this is what will happen. You'll go to O2O. They'll take your information. They'll ask you a few questions. He'll give you some work to do for 2 weeks to kind of prove and then we'll reassess after 2 weeks to make sure that your loved one is actually sleepy enough to benefit. And then we'll ship you the light therapy device and a Fitbit, and you get to keep it. Please keep it, don't send it back to us, right? And that's thanks to FBWR. I wouldn't be able to afford it, right? So, but you get to keep it, and that's because, and it's 2 weeks of you documenting sleep. It's 2 visits, one before randomization and once at randomization. We ship your devices. For 3 weeks, you don't know if you're on the placebo device or the active device. And then all of you will get the active device after the end of 3 weeks, okay? And then there's 3 more weeks, so in 6 weeks, your study is done. That's it. It's the shortest study ever, all right? And it's for all-cause sleepiness. So you don't have to worry about narcolepsy. You don't have to worry about obstructive sleep apnea. Because we don't care about impressing FDA for this study. It doesn't matter, right? I don't care what they think, right? Whether or not it reduces sleepiness, that's all we care about. So it's easy peasy. Please join us. 6 and up. Thank you.
So our final presenter actually has a really unique opportunity. This opportunity is not for your kids, it's actually for you, the caregivers. So we have Lindsay who will tell us a little bit about Project Wellcast.
Thank you. My name is Lindsay Graham, and I am one of the researchers that work on Project Wellcast. I'll invite you to expand your idea of what a clinical trial can be, and because this is focused on you as the caregiver. Essentially, we're still going to provide interventions and treatments, and we're still going to look for efficacy, but these treatments are not drugs. And not a device either. So essentially, Project Wellcast aims to use digital technologies to investigate what kind of support solutions work well for caregivers of children with rare diseases. So essentially what we do is we will invite you to be part of our study if you are interested and you have a child between ages 2 and 35 years old that has a documented neurogenetic condition, including, of course, Prader-Willi. If you're interested in participating and also live in the United States, you are welcome to enroll in our trial. And essentially what happens is we'll spend the first 2 weeks asking you lots of questions about you as the caregiver. So we'll use some gold standard clinical assessments, and we'll also use what we affectionately refer to as snapshot surveys, where we'll text you and ask you a couple quick questions in the middle of your day. We use all of the information that we learn about you in those first 2 weeks to put into our personalized health routing algorithm that we've developed. And essentially what this algorithm does is helps us decide which support program is going to be the best for you based on the needs that were identified in those first 2 weeks. The actual treatments last 12 weeks long and all are delivered virtually via telehealth. The treatments involve things like peer-to-peer coaching with other rare disorder caregivers, child-focused skills trainings, group and individual therapies, or research journaling. So essentially there's a variety of things that you might get, but our algorithm will help us decide what is best for you based on your needs. We'll continue to monitor your mental health and continue to use those snapshot surveys throughout those 12 weeks of the intervention. And then at the end of the study, we'll also kind of repeat that initial 2 weeks we did at the beginning to evaluate the effectiveness, the acceptability, the efficacy, all of those things associated with the treatments. So that's kind of the quick version. Yeah, that's Project Wellcast.
So no travel required, all virtual.
No travel required, all virtual, no blood, no drugs, no nothing. This one's much easier.
So it's just some mental health assistance.
Absolutely, yes. We're trying
Wonderful.
to figure out, we believe that caregivers that are well-supported, caregivers that have the resources and the mental health support that they need are going to be better caregivers, and that their children are going to benefit from that. So that's the real goal of the study, is to figure out how we can effectively and scientifically, rigorously figure out what that is.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing about your study. So we're going to open it up to Q&A at this point. As we mentioned earlier, we have mics in the aisles on either side. If you have a question for any of our panelists, you are welcome to come up and ask away.
Susan, while people are getting up to ask questions, I'm just going to give a little plug for the the Project Wellcast, which I have participated in. It's really excellent, and I would encourage we do not take good enough care of ourselves as caregivers. And you are a better person for your child if you're in a mentally good place. So just a little plug for that. And the other plug is that when this project was getting started, FPWR provided some pilot funding, and then they were able, with the data from that initial pilot funding, get a very large grant from the NIH to make this a much larger program. So it's another example of how we can seed a little funding and leverage that to bring new resources to our community.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Rutchick. I have a daughter who's 5, and we're planning to start the carbetocin trial next week in Brooklyn. So that's exciting. But question I have and I'm concerned about is that we're also very excited about DCCR. And I'm curious, does starting a trial preclude us from trying that in the future? Or, what is the relationship between these, when you start a trial?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's something that we internally have been talking about, is how we're going to approach that. So I think it depends, if and when DCCR gets approved, what is the label going to look like, and what is the comprehensive safety profile going to look like, and how is that going to align with our product? And so I think some of that is still to be determined, but certainly when that decision is made, we will communicate that with the community. But I can't really say at this point what that's going to look like and when it will be available. Sorry.
Thank you. That's okay.
Hi, I have a question for Dr. Singh about the vagus nerve device. Just curious if there's certain restrictions you might have when it's being activated. Like, can you still walk around, or you have to sit down and kind of I don't know, just meditate during it kind of thing?
Sure, yeah. So for those of us who are old enough and remember what a pager looked like, so it's basically like a slightly larger than a pager, right? Or you can think of it as a thicker battery pack, thick and small. It can be clipped on to the belt, and it's very unobtrusive. So, especially if they're doing they're used to sitting in one place, or kind of have something not a very physical time of their day, right? When they're getting ready for school, or right after school, or they're finishing their homework, or watching TV or something like that, it's pretty easy to keep on. I've had subjects who are, I'm calling them patients, but subjects who wear it to school, if need be, if that's easier for them. It's not obtrusive at all. I mean, I wouldn't say at all, but I haven't heard so far any complaints about that.
Yeah, they can walk around.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't want them doing gymnastics.
Yeah, they can't be swimming
walking
while.
around and, going through their day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good news. Okay, thank you.
Hello. Just the light therapy, if it's a light, how is there a placebo?
I can't tell you that. So, the good thing is that it's the same device, and we can change, without giving too much information, we can change the setting of the device to make it active. So go from, ineffective to effective. So we ship one device, and I don't know whether you got the active device or the inactive device, and then we unblind at 3 weeks. We sort of given Otuvo and Hassan, my other CRC, they'll walk you through how to activate it. So one of the key requirements of the study is to not post photos of it on social media. And if you go outside, you will see the device, but you'll see that it's not turned on for that same reason. So you cannot tell your friends, hey, it's working great, but this is what it looks like. Woo, no, don't do that. Yeah, all right. So yeah, thank you.
He stole one of my questions. My other question is about pitolisant. My son is 15 and formerly was on modafinil and Provigil, and in the last year came off of that because we found that was increasing anxiety and behavior. So I'm wondering if you've had any increase in anxiety and behavior using pitolisant.
Well, it is one of the adverse events that's been reported. It's fairly low in terms of how frequently it occurs. But the interesting thing about what's a little different about pitolisant is that it's a non-stimulant, it's a non-amphetamine. I mean, modafinil is not either, but it works really in a completely different, on a different neurotransmitter system. Whereas modafinil is a little more focused on the norepinephrine and dopamine, where our focus is a little different. But yes, we have seen some anxiety has been reported with pitolisant.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm 20 years old. I have PWS. My question is, if I do the light therapy and the thing with the Fitbit, my question is, if I'm in another study already, can I participate in those studies while I am in the other study?
The quick answer is no, because the other studies will not allow, concomitant. Even with us, we wouldn't want you to be in two studies at the same time. So, for example, if you were interested in, I don't know which study you're part of, but if you are part of any of the studies, and we don't know if we have a strong idea that most, our theory is that light therapy will reduce sleepiness. We don't know if it will also reduce some of the other things. So if you're on a study to reduce hyperphagia and you start light therapy and your hyperphagia goes low, then we won't know if it was the drug that caused it or the light therapy. So it's a disservice to the others. So just to help make sure that the research is being done well, it's better to go to one study at a time. But if you're done with this, with the trial, right, and you're interested in joining us, you can let us know. If you're in an open label, yeah, that's it. Basically, if you're done with the clinical trial, reach out to us and we'll see what we can do to help.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Hi there. Quick question for the carbetocin study. So, has there been anything? I read something that said there might be some anger outbursts after the carbetocin study in some sort of withdrawal. Is that something you've seen from patients that may have stopped the study or something along those lines?
That's not something that that we've seen in the study thus far. Is that what you're talking about, or in the previous?
In this one or previous, or has there, when the trial ends for a patient or something, does there some sort of withdrawal element or like anger or something that comes up?
No, I mean, the half-life of carbetocin is pretty short, about 60 minutes. So this withdrawal phenomenon, it would be relatively unexpected to have something like that. And I can't sadness. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Sad when it's over. Yeah, no,
Okay.
I can't comment on that. That's not something
No, that's fine.
that we.
Thank you.
A common clinical trial question that we hear a lot is, do I have to go to a particular site? Do I have to go to the site that my primary care doctor is at? Do I have to go to the site that is closest to me? Is there limitations into which site a patient has to participate at? Anyone can answer. Nope. She's virtual, so she gets to say that.
You know, I can speak for our trial. We have sites located around the country, and if there's a site that's not particularly close to where the person lives, you know, we can make arrangements to have them, you know, make travel arrangements to help with that. I mean, generally, if there's a site, you know, located where you live, that's probably just more convenient, I think, for any given person. But arrangements can be made. At least that's how our study is. That may be true for the others.
I can answer for ours as well. So as we move into phase 3, the plan is actually to limit the in-person visits. So we're trying to do as much possibly remote outside of, so we previously had 6 in-person visits, now it's 4. And again, for phase 3, we tried to limit that. And then in terms of supporting, we want to support you to be able to get to the site. So if that looks different, it'll be different for families, it'll be different for locations. So we're going to try to support as much as we can to make sure that you have the resources available to attend those visits and to get to those sites.
Hello, my daughter is 24, and I just texted her about the daytime sleepiness study, which she is super interested in. But she had a question. She said, what if when I'm less sleepy, I notice the hunger more?
That's interesting. So you know, it's unlikely to work that way because, I mean, again, I'm just totally theoretical, right? Because, see, hunger has a significant cognitive load, which means that, you know, just like when any of us, when we are hungry, it's hard for us to think about other things, right? So, and it's you know, we tend to we can't control our impulses as well. We are less patient, right? Similarly, when we are very sleepy, we are less able to control ourselves, right? Our impulse control. So theoretically, improved sleepiness, right, should improve their ability to control other things. Now, it's totally theoretical, right? I mean, what I saw with guanfacine, just anecdotally, the first, you know, guanfacine can cause some sleepiness initially when you start it. And one of the issues was that in the first week or so, sometimes they would get more irritable because they're fighting the sleep. So I would kind of think that the opposite should happen, if anything. But we don't know if it's going to affect hyperphagia.
I could add to that. You know, there's a lot of literature and data on outside of Prader-Willi syndrome that sort of focuses on the fact that, you know, people who are sleepy tend to eat more and also tend to be have, you know, behavioral issues. So there's clearly, you know, a bi-directional relationship, if you know, with each one sort of affecting the other. So yeah, I agree with what Deepan is saying. Yeah.
We have a few minutes. If there's any more questions.
Yes, this question is for the Aardvark representative, the endocrinologist. So when you presented the trial about the bitter stuff in the gut, it kind of took me by surprise because I thought it was a very interesting concept. If we wanted to learn more about it without jeopardizing the integrity of the research, what would we might look up about the whole impact of the bitterness? And because I'm so used to hearing about sweet stuff and how that can kind of trigger, you know, hyperphagia, to hear how you say maybe bitterness could kind of help tamp that down. It's a very interesting concept. So where might I read more about that?
Well, first, I can provide you sites, but obviously our site. We have a lot of information on there.
Okay.
But also, bitter taste receptors are kind of all over your body. And also, our founder and CEO, Dr. Tien Lee, I feel like that was a game show host introduction. But, but he actually, so a few years ago in 2017, he developed this and figured out the science. And then developed the drug knowing that it actually fits the hyperphagia pathway. And then that's how we realized that how we could benefit Prader-Willi. And so when you actually take our drug, you don't taste the bitter. You actually take it and then it hits those receptors without having that taste profile. But there's a lot of data on supporting this that we have on our website, but I could also add to that.
Right now, I just, just hearing the counteractive Rousseau against the sugars because it helps increase or decrease the satiety. So it was just really interesting. So
Yeah, and the misnomer with bitter taste receptors is that it's only hitting bitter taste receptors, and we're talking about hyperphagia, but we also know that it's also anti-inflammatory. So we're actually looking at that as well, and also anti-anxiety. So these are all the things that fit under the profile, and which we hope to have more data on soon.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thanks for asking.
Hi, I'm sorry, I know we're running out of time, so I'll be really quick. I do have a question related to the VNS research. And with that device, because the intention is to help to reduce behavioral outbursts, which can include breaking things, throwing things, including possibly the device, is there guidance for caregivers when to maybe end a session early and remove that device in order to keep track of that 4-hour wear during the course of the day?
So, Lisa would be a great person to answer that question. But that device is pretty indestructible. I wouldn't want you to test it, but it's pretty hardcore. I mean, but Lisa, maybe you can add some color to that.
Okay, I'm going to face this way just because of the thing, but so yes, there are going to be times when your child may not want to wear it. We don't want you to create additional stress by putting it on and having that battle of wearing it. I don't want to wear it. I need you to wear it, but I don't want to wear it. It's okay to give a break and step away. And if, we also recognize that our kids are very routine driven. So building up to that 4 hours is something that may take some time. So there's a little bit of an on-ramp there. But in the beginning, it's about establishing times where your child may feel comfortable wearing it. It could be times when you have natural opportunities, sitting and having a meal, getting in the car and driving back and forth to school or therapy or whatever programs they may be attending, because they're sitting there anyway, and they're going to be doing the thing that they're doing regardless. Some of our families express that their children like to wear it for 4 hours straight, and that's the routine that they like, and that's what they want to do. So it's trying to figure out what your child is comfortable with, giving them some ownership over, what feels right to them. But if you're having a bad day or they're having a bad day, take a step back and revisit that. And it's okay to say, okay, this may not be the time, but let's make a plan. And what's going to work for us? Let's take a 15-minute break, a 30-minute break. The rest of the day, we'll pick this back up tomorrow where we left off. Because we want it to be a positive experience. We don't want it to become a battle between you and your loved one. Does that help? Okay, you're welcome.
And we bought extra devices, fully appreciating that they might get thrown and broke.
Can I just add, it's not like the device has to be on to reduce the temper outburst. The idea is the 4 hours a day over time will reduce temper outbursts even when the device is off. That's what the initial pilot studies show. So if your child's gearing up for a temper outburst, you don't want to try to tackle them and stick the device on. No.
So I would like to thank all of our panelists for joining us this afternoon and sharing about their studies.